Aus dieser PowerPoint, das ist ja nur die PowerPoint-Präsentation.
Das ist die Keynote,
Genau, die
genau.
brauchen wir. Und da brauchen wir jetzt noch den Ton raus.
Genau.
Da war jetzt ein Video, das ich eigentlich gerade testen wollte.
Ja, genau. Ich glaube, ich kann hingehen.
Achso, ja, mach. Ah ja, okay.
Musik.
5, 6. Audio, genau, danke, geht. Sauber und rauschfrei, ne? Sauber und rauschfrei, ne?
Ja, und dann muss aber gleichzeitig sozusagen mit dem Video reden, das ist klar. Ja, weil wir,
Das müsst ihr mit den Jungs da hinten machen. Ich mache hier nur verkabeln Bühne und.
ich meine, wir haben das vorher alles dem.
Aber nicht mit mir. Deswegen, weil kann. Gerade auch nichts, Benny. Benny? Handsender 5 würde für die Moderation rausgehen, Handsender 6 stelle ich auf Stativ auf die Bühne und Handsender 7 und 8 stelle ich in das vordere Drittel vom Saal für Rückfragen. Ja? Gut. Und es würde jetzt auch gleich eine Ansage kommen, irgendwie von wegen setzt euch hin. Ich gebe
So I want to see some more movement in the back to the front. And if you have to leave early, that's fine. Don't worry about it. You can still sit in the front. Please come. Yes, you. Thank you, Maria. Let's start.
Die 2 Handmikrofone stehen vierte Reihe. 7 links, 8 rechts. Und es gibt im Moment nur diese 2 Ansätze auf der Bühne, ja, genau. 5 ist in der Hand und 6 steht auf dem Stativ.
Sorry, I was.
Can we put a picture of him on the chair? She will be, and you will be. Oh, yes.
She's not on the stage.
Yeah.
Let's go. Everybody ready? Oh, that guy's missing. Mika. Ready to go?
Yeah, here's Sunda, so I really don't want to talk alone.
Oh, but watch out for the water. Leave it there, it's fine. Just sit here.
Yeah.
Let's start.
Yeah.
And we'll see.
It's okay. I'm fine. It's just like.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the session Exhibit the Future. I'm the convener for this session. I'm Marjolein van Bremen. I'm from Nemo Science Museum. And I'm going to do a little introduction and then give the floor to the speakers behind me. Today we're going to talk about the future. Museums dealing with the future are trending. It's relatively new, it's very exciting, and it's terribly important. Important because we are and should be dealing with the most important issues around a healthy future of our planet and all its inhabitants. But many of us, including me, are still wondering how to cover this elusive topic of the future. How do these museums approach the unpredictable future through their concept, content, and design? How are they helping their audiences with future-proof competences? How do they shape their strategy? What kind of outcomes do they want to reach with their audiences? Today you will hear the insights of 3 state-of-the-art museums that are dealing with the future. The museums cover issues not mere around technology, but also societal and environmental issues. These 3 museums have different concepts, different content, and different designs. The Zukunftsmuseum of Deutsches Museum in Nuremberg, Futurium in Berlin, and Museum of the Future that just opened this year in Dubai. You will hear the stories from the perspective of both their management and the creatives behind the exhibition. First, I would like to welcome the Zukunftsmuseum in Nuremberg. Speaking will be Andreas Gunderwein, Head of Exhibition and Collection from the Deutsches Museum, and Shirin Frangal-Brückner, Founding Partner and Managing Director of Atelier Brückner. Go ahead.
Hello to everybody.
Science or fiction? This is the headline of our exhibition, and this is the main topic of our Zukunftsmuseum, Future Museum in Nuremberg. It's a branch of Deutsches Museum in Munich, maybe known by the most of you. And for those not that familiar with the geography of Germany, Nuremberg is around about 180 kilometers north of Munich. It's a small city in northern Bavaria. And 7 years ago, we started thinking about this future museum. It was funded by the Federal State of Bavaria. It has an area of around about 5,500 square meters. And it opened last year after 7 years of work. Science or fiction is the headline. And we are using prototypes from science and industry instead of ancient objects. We are showing the expectations, the good one as well as the bad one, the utopia and the dystopia of these possible technological developments, and invite the visitors to discuss them with us. You can see here on the left side the science, this bright side, with the prototypes, with the innovations, and with some interactive experiments to understand how this technology is functioning. On the right hand, we have the fiction side with the bad and the less bad visions, and we are inviting the visitors to participate, to discuss the consequences, the impacts of these technologies on society and on our individual lives. And so we are not only focusing on the technology, but also on the ethic of technology and the impact on society. We divided the exhibition in 5 different topics, starting with the blue one, work and daily life. Then body and mind, which is something like medicine of the future, urban life or the system city and the system earth, and last but not least, space and time. And in the middle, in the center, we have the forum. This is the room for the discussions. Work and daily life. That means the world is going digital. Robots, artificial intelligence, big data, social media, and the internet, making all this stuff, our life, more comfortable. Or will we end up in a world dominated by machines and robots? This is the main question of this part. Body and mind, which means medicine of the future. The dream is maybe no more diseases, no more aging, eternal life, optimized humans or cyborgs. And the central question is here, is it really a dream or is it a nightmare? This system city means future infrastructure of megacities, future architecture, and future mobility. What will a city worth living in look like in the future? These are the questions we are asking. We are not answering them, but we are asking them and presenting some ideas how it could work. System Earth. That means we are focusing on the resources of the entire planet, food for everyone, unlimited energy, control over the climate. Is that really happening? And what can we do? What has to be done to keep the Earth habitable? Last but not least, space and time, traveling through space and time. This seems to be a universe full of promises. Will we colonize the moon and the Mars? Will we discover distant galaxies? But there are some problems, some technical problems still not solved, and the human body is not built for life in space. And is it really the right choice instead of focusing on our own home planet? These 5 exhibitions are accompanied by 2 visitors labs where we're offering programs dealing with the technical details we are presenting in the exhibition. And the core is the forum. This is the room where we are discussing all these ethical questions, all these questions about impact of technology on society and on our individual life with our visitors every day. This is the general concept of the Future Museum in Nuremberg. And these are the topics and the objects a little bit we are presenting. And all this is embedded in a special design, focusing on the central question, technology and ethics. And I would like to ask Mrs. Brückner to explain this part.
Thank you very much for handing over. So let me organize myself. So basically, this is our first sketch during the competition stage. And what you see that we had from the initial start of the project, we somehow had the task to combine all these different topics Andreas already introduced in one system, in one organism future. And also we wanted to integrate the visitor within this organism. The visitor should really be encouraged to create, to discuss, to think, and also to understand that we can influence our future ourselves. We had this requirement of developing a really flexible exhibition system in order to ensure that updates and integration of new contents and topics are really easily possible. And we decided to find a very abstract but also very strong spatial image and to represent this idea of this organism, and we implemented a graphical spatial grid within the spaces, and within each different topic, this grid forms to an individual design language and somehow gives a design language to the space. The grid gives the possibility to get three-dimensional. It is possible to populate it with a large variety of different exhibits, interactives, and also there's a flexible modularity within this system. There are large-scale exhibits and graphics and just the flexibility to update all the time. The idea that the visitor would be a really integrative part of this exhibition. For this, we developed a toolkit, and this toolkit has demonstration stations, interactive stations, media stations, participation stations. So the individual engagement of visitor with content is in the focus of this exhibition approach, and this is the idea of basic main focus of the Museum of the Future Nuremberg. Just to show some examples of how visitors are engaged and what we offer, what kind of experiences we offer. We have here on the left-hand side the robot grabbing tools where visitors really can understand about possibilities of robotics for the future. Or on the right-hand side, we have Media Tornado, where we explain how messages in internet distribute, how fast messages is distribute, and a visitor can really see how they evolve, how they change, and how messages are happening in a visitor. So, in Body and Mind, the topic. We have, for example, a game where visitors really can sit on fitness bikes, and it's a kind of Tinder game, where by using, by being very fit, you can somehow get better partners in higher level partners, and you somehow, the more engagement, the better is your future. This is the story around that. Do we have sound here or not? Okay. So, and then we have installations like Noise in the city, and where the visitor can really be aware that we are daily surrounded by a noise cloud. And this noise cloud combines a large variety of different noise sources. And by pulling these different buttons, the visitor understands and can create and understand what this means for future cities. Or within the system Earth, we have interactive tokens stations explaining ingredients and recipes of futuristic food. or a media overlay in an electrical waste installation, where we really can understand that electrical waste is overall, and that we can understand the different sorts of electrical waste. And last but not least, of course, we have in space and time, we have projects like Mars exhibitions, and we show that even space is polluted by leftovers of the humans. Beside the exhibition itself, we have, as Andreas Gundelwein already mentioned, we have workshop areas, workshop spaces, and we try to find a welcoming and also scientific environment. And here, especially kids can participate in instructed workshops and tinkering sessions. So it's additional offer to somehow engage visitors with content of the organism and the system of future. Last but not least, there's one highlight installation in the forum, and the forum is the starting and the ending point of the visitor. And it gives, it's a very flexible system. It gives insights to the exhibition and also summarizes the overall visit. And there are, as you can see, there's a kinetic media cube with nine LED screens, and it can be moved and turned and synchronized with the video content, and also can be used as a seamless media screen for presentations or workshops or similar offers. Overall, the Future Museum Nuremberg, it's basically a place where visitors can actively participate, can engage with the future, projects with future possibilities, and can understand that they are an integrative part of the future. And I hope we have now a sound, because I just want to show a short video that you can get a feeling, and you're welcome to visit. Yeah, thank you very much. I think we have very different approaches today, content-wise, design-wise, as you mentioned before. And I'm happy to welcome or ask you, shall I do this, or how is it foreseen, to ask you to the stage, but I cannot introduce you. Maybe you do it yourself.
So thanks a lot. So we want to invite you to a small sneak in the process of planning the Futurium in Berlin. So first of all, when we started in 2015, we didn't know anything, but we knew the draft of the building. And this is important because we had 3 different areas. the forum, which is the event area, the cloud, the liquid exhibition, we'll come to this strange word later, and the cave, our laboratorium. So, and our idea was really to bring these three different parts together and to make a program which interweaves all these three different spaces. What we also knew at the very beginning was that exhibiting future, so we are all museums specialists, it's quite contradictory because you don't have any real single object. And you have all these growing challenges, uncertainties, stereotyped imaginaries, and so on. So our aim was, that's where we really worked on, was to empower people to shape their future, not to show them how the future would be, but to shape their own future, to foster futures literacy, and to provoke enthusiasm for the future. So with this approach, we started to think, what should we do? Of course, first of all, breaking these stereotypes, making systemic relations transparent, focusing on global changes and challenges, and not on the latest technical innovations, and discussing possibilities and hopes. And at the end, presenting multiple futures. So futures with a technological view, futures where you put the nature on the top of your thinking, and a future which is oriented and asks what people really do want and what do they need. So we started with these conceptual drafts and handed them over to our partners, Art and Com. So with all this bunch of challenges, wishes, hopes, and we worked in 3 years on the concept, which opened then in 2019.
Okay, thank you. Complex stuff. Fun fact. By this time, it was not Futurium, it was Haus der Zukunft. So the House of the Future, which wouldn't make sense, turned into House of the Futures, didn't also have a nice ring, so hence the Futurium turned into Futurium at the later stage. But the idea of these futures, this was the sort of first idea that we had to say, okay, well, we have this kind of a bioadaptive future, sufficiency-based uses, this sort of a calamity of business as usual, or being technologically optimistic, or kind of trying to react in a different way. Mapping that into different aspects of everyday life. So looking at health technology, looking at the Earth system, the climate change, so we have the working, how do we live in cities, or how do we feed ourselves? Putting those things together became this complex matrix. Complex matrix, just like we heard before, modular system. We made lots of modules, and then kind of struggled with this sort of lack of immersion. So you have lots of blocks, and you can put them into places, but you don't really feel those worlds, these different possible futures, right? So it's not like this is the way, but there's different ways of seeing what could be the potential. So iterating from that, let's focus more on a little bit less, 5 different worlds instead of now 6, as examples of trying to map the content into different places, and then having the thematic strands as sort of lines going through the space. The intersections define spaces, and in those spaces, those stories would be told from these different perspectives in these different worlds. And then this was early rendering of that. So what if those threads would literally be above the exhibition, so we would have freedom to design the exhibition differently depending on this space you're in. Roll into the present. The final stage, we have at the exhibition 3 worlds. One looking at technology optimistic future, another one about the nature, and the third one about human at the center. And then there are voids, which is kind of spaces where the not defined topics can be exhibited, and there's a kind of a closure or evaluation and the intro. So I click very quickly, just skip through the images so you get the sense. Then I'll show the video and voice over that. So you enter a lot of space, but no much text. Common cause, human-centric, low-tech, bio-inspired, high-tech, but high-tech doesn't mean a lot of screens. And then the high-tech with this sort of a clean sci-fi aesthetic. Now, how do these strands then, how do you then map those different topics? How do you do them? Everybody's talking about this, well, museum visit begins before, or then you do something, collect, interact in the space, and then you do things after when you go back home. So we had this system looking at how do you register before, having a token, so physical thing that guides you through the exhibit. And this is kind of, on one hand, a marker, so you can collect topics, but it's also an interaction moment that you get confronted with challenges. So you get to have a voice. You say something. You get to decide aspects of the future, not just receive it as this sort of a, well, this is going to happen whether you like it or not. So now I'll voice over the video. I know we have a lot of time, but I like to speak fast. I hope you are following. So now we don't need the sound. I can speak over. When you enter the space, first you have this kind of introductory gesture. Everything is getting faster. This is a kind of a tornado taking you up to the exhibition. The opening space, you have just questions, numbers, statements, everything is abstract, no solution yet. And then from this introduction space, with your token, you jump into the first, or any of those three spaces really. And this one now is the bioadaptive, where we created a badass, huge sculpture that is computationally complex, but that's not the point. It has this organic feel and look that sets the stage for all the stories. So all the parts, all the narrative is woven into this big sculpture. And then we try to find different ways to tell the stories that are appropriate into this world. So for example, talking about circular economy in artistic way, there's this kind of a Murmelbahn, I don't know. So this kind of a thing that is that is an artistic kind of reference, and then combines that with the topic. In the future, in the techno-optimistic world, of course it's about 3D printing, augmented reality, but the topic in this case is smart cities. Or in this case, looking at the expansive numbers in the how the world is turning. So media in this case has the metaphorical function of pointing to the future, and then it's got the factual function of telling those stories. You can pick all the different things as you walk through. But so here the idea is that the way you interact in this space is different because you are in a different world. You can play roulette with CRISPR and gene editing, and you can use leap emotion as interaction because that seems to be kind of modern. But this is, of course, the idea of thinking of the future, not the future itself. So this is the techno-optimistic kind of a central perspective. And every space has this kind of a key visual. And in this one, the big data is a sculpture that you enter and you can't do anything. It's like you are under the it's the system that is giving you all the answers, but you have no control of it anymore. In the human-centric world, the same key visual is a swing. You are at the center, and it's not always high-tech. Interaction is very much pen and paper based. And then finally, you've gone through the whole tour. You've collected different things, and you have this kind of a future machine that gives you kind of a prediction in a metaphorical way of your choices, of your evaluations throughout this journey, which is a postcard that you take home. So this is a kind of a quick run-through of the exhibition, and now we kind of reflect a little bit of what does this all mean.
So I jump to the next one. This is what has happened since 2019. We have more than 900,000 visitors, so the first million will arrive somehow in July, perhaps. So if you come, perhaps, yeah. Even if we had 3 closures due to the pandemic. So this is for us a huge success. We didn't dream about such high numbers in Berlin, but yeah, and for me the best result is we have not only these numbers of visitors, but we have active visitors. We have more than 3,100 token users, so you know this wristband we showed you, and that means these visitors do use this tool in the exhibition, and afterwards they go home and dive more deeply in all these topics and more interviews and more statistics and more engagement and so on. And this is really a big success in our, yeah. And what we also do is what I announced in the beginning is this liquid exhibition. That doesn't mean that we have too much money, no, unfortunately not. But what we try is to exchange every year 1 or 2, 3 topics in the exhibition. And these topics go, because we have a more or less modular system, so it's possible also in the sense of sustainability. So we can change these parts of the exhibition and they go in our digital archive. And that's how we renew the exhibition slow by slow. Of course, we make some actual things constantly, but these are the new topics.
Okay, yeah. Do we have more time? Okay, yeah. So
if we have the time, I can talk about some exhibits, because when I started, I told you, oh, what about making an exhibition without a single object? So that's why what we try is to make a combination of different exhibits. We have these technical devices, of course, but we also work a lot with artworks, with models, and of course, with artists, like the picture on the left hand above. This is made with an artist who makes such a sort of dreaming story. What about your consumption and so on? So you can sit down and hear his thoughts. And on the right hand, a very actual exhibit. It's from an African artist, Mabunda, who made this throne from weapons. And this is one of our exhibits where we talk about the big questions we have. So we have a very optimistic way of explain our future in the exhibition. But of course we know there are many, many things where we don't have a simple answer. And unfortunately, this exhibit is, now becoming one of the most actual.
So, from my point of view, from the media design point of view, closing remarks for our part. Artcom Studio that I represent here is a new media since the 80s, and the early days. How we respond, how media relates to technology and future. It's like so implicitly inventing the future. So in early days, there was the kind of inventive strand going on. You'd create something that became a world phenomenon, like a TerraVision in the mid-90s turned into a Google Earth that was then made famous in Netflix series recently. So the inventing the future as media designers or future as aesthetic. I consciously chose really old picture from 2005 to kind of communicate, creating the scene of talking about the future. So it's media not at the center, but media as a way to frame the story. What I'm most excited right now is the empowerment. I mean, we talk about digital media design, now we talk about interaction design, and interaction doesn't imply computers necessarily. So it's about how we participate into this conversation. So how can we have the talk about the future collectively? And I think this is the sort of angle that we managed to work in Futurium very nicely. Thank you. We blew the time. Whew.
Thank you. So that was the story about Futurium in Berlin. And finally, we have the story of Museum of the Future in Dubai, just opened. So we have with us Britta Nagel. She's concept director of Atelier Bruckner. And then online joining us, do we see him? Do we see him? We don't see him. Ah, there he is. Perfect. You see him. So that's Sundar Raman, Director of Technology from the Museum of the Future.
Yeah. Hello, welcome. So this is our perspective on the future, and it is in Dubai. I wanted to start a bit that we really worked as a team. So we joined in 2018 Atelier Bruckner, and we were leading the design process. But there is a lot of people involved in this, and I think that was the challenge and also the beauty of this project, to include scientists, artists, bring them together and shape the worlds of the future. Sundar? Let's hear who you are.
I'm Sundar Raman. I'm the Director of Technology for the Museum of the Future. It's been great working with Atelier Bruckner to bring this vision to life. And Brendan McGettrick is our creative director, who is not with us today, but I think we should give him the credit for pulling together all of the visions that we had and facilitating this narrative that we're going to present to you.
Sundar?
Yes, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll do a quick introduction to the museum itself. So as we said, the Museum of the Future is in Dubai. I think it's very important for that to be the context within which all of this is framed, because I think where we start is really in Dubai. All of our narrative is around Dubai. And if we look to what the future is, I think it's a very good thought experiment to look back to some period of time. So let's say we go back 50 years and we see where Dubai was, and all of the stuff that Dubai, from just an empty desert landscape, has built up to bring to Dubai where it is today, with where we have the Museum of the Future. Our context now is to take it from today to this next step, which is the next 50 years. The Museum of the Future is set in a speculative future that is designed in 2071, roughly 100 years from the founding of the United Arab Emirates in 1971. And everything that we're going to be talking about today is how we've thought through this idea of our perspective of the future, because seeing everyone else's perspective, obviously there are many, many paths to how we envision what comes out of the future. I think one of the biggest things that we face as exhibition and exhibit designers or experience designers is this idea of where we are taking people. And in a way, the Museum of the Future is designed to be the gateway into some speculative future, our vision of where it is. And all of it starts off with a narrative. So for us, the future is really a story.
Yes, and of course the story is not only outside of the building. You saw the entrance really coming into a new world, the future, and it's this quirky building. Everyone asks itself what is inside, but inside is a journey, and that journey goes from the outer space to the inner world. It's not so different actually from the ideas of the Futurium, but the visitor is really inside the story. So he's starting with a journey to space. So he's going to OSS Hope, the space station, and here he finds the future of humanity in space. Going down one level, sorry, I'm always on the wrong side. So here you have the space station. And then you see here, it's the next level, it's the HEAL Institute. So you come back to Earth, and it's the future of ecology. So we invented this institute which tries to heal the ecology and bring us forward, try to save our planet. And the last one is again about us. So where do we go? Let's take care about us. It's the future. Sorry. It's the Al-Waha, it's the wellness center, it's the future of wellness. And then we have the last, not the last one, but the today and tomorrow. So here you find all the speculative objects. They are prototypes. So here you can test. You can see what is coming next, what is there next year. So here we created partnerships with firms in order to showcase the near future. And the last one is really nice. Thank you, Emma. She designed it. It's the Future Heroes area. It's for children. So here they become the future heroes in order to see how they can shape on a very basic level, but really engaging how they can make this world work.
I think one of the important things, as we're saying, we're taking people on this journey from outer space to inner space. That's both metaphorical or figurative and literal. We want to take people out of the context of Dubai today in 2022 to 2071 in a different place. So we're constantly playing with this idea of both space and time. And in a way, our journey as exhibit designers and experience designers is to figure out how to get people's emotions engaged in everything that we do. And significantly, when we think about the narratives that everyone is talking about, the future really is about a state of emotion. And we try and extract that as much as possible through everything that we do. So this section, we're going to talk about how we try and extract as much as possible from people in terms of tying into the narratives that we have on each floor. I'll say that this idea of technology, humanity, and ecology is something that we are all very familiar with. It's the way that we talk about different aspects of the future. This is the same premise that a lot of us have seen in science fiction movies and how we think about our worlds. What's important about it is to also think in terms of what each of those means, because we always think about the future in a very sparse and kind of minimalist way, in a very clean future, except the future is super messy. The future has a lot of textures. The future has a lot of mechanisms for us to interact with each other. And one of the cool things that I like about the exhibit design that Atelier Bruckner, Galleria 12, and Altspace, their partners, did here, is to take some of that textural quality and embed it in different parts of the exhibition space. I think we often think of technology as the thing that's on the screen or that's driven by code that you can see in an application, but there's code to almost everything that we do. The terrazzo, the materiality of what we did, the OSS Hope floor here, the floor where we take you into space, also has a textural quality built out of 3D printed materials. So, but that is not an obvious representation of technology. So very, very much we try to put technology in the background, even though it is so important in everything that we've done. One key case here is how we use dials instead of touch interfaces, because haptic interfaces are super important. Sorry, Britta, please continue.
Yeah, so I think together we really made this one floor, the OSS Hope, as you can see here. You're welcomed by the moon. It's the beauty of the universe. And then you really, you come and see on which spaceship you are. You can see that on the left-hand side. Here we imagined what that space station works, but it's also showing what the technology behind it. How does it be sustainable without any energy? So it was invented together with scientists how the spaceship could work. And of course we have the beauty of the Earth, which each astronaut actually explains the first time he sees it. So it is also about seeing where this world develops to. So there's still, of course, endangered areas, ecology, which you later on will actually find. And I think this is a nice chapter to go down, to go down to the Heal Institute, you see we work with spaces, and here it's about this institute. You go in, it's about seeing how the Amazon, in this case, is researched and what happened there. And we have the library, the Vault of Life, where all species and all DNA is actually there, where the visitor can then interact. And Sunda, I think you would go how we actually include the visitor here.
Yeah, this is again, in every floor, this idea of going from outer space to inner space really is mirrored. And that narrative arc has to be kept continuous because, you know, visitors need some level of consistency, but also from a narrative perspective, we have to hold on to something that we said, okay, how do we keep the story going no matter where people enter into it? Here, the baseline of the library is 2,400 jars that represent different species. And the idea is that visitors can come in and collect those species to create new solutions for some of the challenges that we face. That narrative of outer to inner space comes through in how we provide a haptic device that people can collect things through and have interactive moments so that they can actually have some sense of engagement with the space. Again, we living in this Instagram world, we obviously have to be very cognizant that everyone's going to come into a space and just want to absorb it, but we also have to give them very clear senses of the specific reason that they're interacting with these spaces.
Yeah, and I think the next space, the Al-Waha, so the Wellness Institute, is really about the senses. Here, it's about your mind, it's about cleaning your mind, understanding what it means also to take care of yourself. You can see we have a hydrosonic bath for your hands, so you feel also new elements. You have a light well, which is an artistic representation. And overall, this is the last chapter where it's very much about being yourself in the future. I think, as Sunda mentioned, for us it was about creating these futures, and what we did is really looking into the spatial images, so looking into what are the worlds we want to represent and how do they look like, so that the visitor is one-to-one in this world, he's part of it. We looked into the demographics, so I think from the choice of themes, we really wanted to have different topics, so the space, or at least the wellness, so there is technology, but also softness to it. And of course, we wanted that it's not only screens, elements you test, but it's really about all senses. So for example, Al-Waha has a beautiful smellscape, which we included. And
I think one of the aspects in exhibit design that we often forget about is people will always go into spaces and have individual experiences. This happens in a lot of museums, but to design a space that's significantly focused on engagement is a whole other situation. We consciously wanted our staff to interact with people because they're the ones who are already in 2071 and are bringing visitors to the speculative future. They're the ones who tell the story. But we have multiple forms of engagement where people have to tie in, because obviously we can't have one person talking to every single visitor. And we had to find different approaches for that. Sorry, go ahead.
Welcome, everyone.
Yeah. So I think
You are now standing on the deck of Space Station Hope.
So what we have here is Aya. So she's welcoming everyone. So she is actually showing where you are. She's telling you the story. She's the introduction character to each of the floors. But what is nice is that we also have
Pioneer update. Hello again, pioneers, wherever you are.
Can you? Yeah. So this is the chief officer of medicine. So she is telling you about the products in space. So we invented all these characters. They tell you about the future and the future of professions, which will emerge in the next 50 years in space. And then, of course, as Sunda said, we also have real stuff there. They're part of the story, and they help to engage with the visitors and make them active within the space.
I think one of the things that's interesting for us is, we can all talk about engagement all we want. And I think we love to in some level, kind of lie to ourselves that people will collect the stories and put it up and whatever else. I've done it myself. But I've seen in this experience that if we give the opportunity for people to interact, they do. These are live videos of the space that we have. You can see, for example, at a table where we provided the facility for people to come together, they do, and they actually talk to each other and they engage with each other. The middle experience is one where 6 people sit around the table and they have to hum in order to create a moment. And you can go, okay, like what has this got to do with the future? But the future really is about humanity coming together to both have shared experiences, but also to try and solve things together. And we see this happen repeatedly where people will come together, like on the sand bath. This is the experience on the floor where we mimic the sand movement in the desert through this projection surface. People will come together and there's almost like a dance of people around each other, and it creates this sense of community within the space. And I think this is really important from the perspective of trying to tell a story where when people leave, they have a sense of having engaged with the space and at least have a snippet of the narrative that we wanted to put into them.
Yeah, and so now finally, the future is now. And here you see a bit the making of and how it looks now, how it's opened, how we work together. Can you put up the sound a bit? Sundar, I think that's your last one, and then I thank everyone.
Okay. I think I want to play this quote, which is one of our guiding principles through all of this. There's a quote. There's one of the quotes that's on the building itself by Sheikh Mohammed, the leader of Dubai. It says, "The future belongs to those who can imagine it, design it, and execute it. It is not something we await, but rather create." The challenge here is really about us making the future that we want. And I think this is very much reflective of the vision of Dubai altogether, but also how we have seen everything that we have done and how it fits into the overall paradigm or design vision of the building itself. I think Britta put it nicely, like there's both, the Museum of the Future is both the building and all of the experiences inside it. And I'll let you speak to this, Britta.
Yeah, and this is, I think, just our final slide. So it's, of course, not our project. It's the project of all of us. We had so many collaborators, so many thinkers, so many scientists, so many artists who helped us to shape that. And we just were the glue who connected everything. But I think it was a wonderful collaboration. And I think science and design can go together. And I thank you. So this is the last one. And I'll hand over to you. I'm looking forward to start a discussion.
Thank you. It's so impressive to hear your concepts, to see all the beautiful images of your museums, some that we may have visited and some maybe not. I would like to open up the floor for questions. And we have microphones standing there. I want to make sure that people on the stage could answer the questions. So could we have one microphone left here so the panelists can answer the questions? So I'm going to walk off the stage. Are there questions from the audience? Maybe questions between... there you are. I have a nice assistant. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It was impressive what I was looking at. I have a question about the museum. I think it's at the beginning, Nürnberg, das Zukunftsmuseum. And I have to switch from German to English, sorry. By the way, I'm Marco Miranda. I'm working in Science Center in Switzerland, in Technorama. The question is about the ethical problems questions room. You mentioned that you have like a room or a space where you can questions, the challenges for the future or ethical challenges. Did I get right? There was like a special room for this kind of discussions. Can you tell something more about that?
Yes, thank you for the question. In the center of this museum, we have a so-called forum. Maybe you've seen the one slide with the stair going up, where around about 100 people and visitors can sit on, and we have a game leading and guiding our visitors through the exhibition, and you can always make your own decision whether you would like to use a special technology with all the advantages and disadvantages or not. And we collect some of these ethical questions. What does it mean? Will a robot support my own work, or will it take it away from me and I'm unemployed and will end in poorness? So these questions, we are selecting these questions and discussing these questions with our visitors in this forum. And this is about a 20-minute session a day. And we are always focusing on one, maximum two different questions. That is the idea. Does it answer your question?
Yes. I mean, if I may question again, something more. What do you do with these kind of answers? Or something happens afterwards, or just 20 minutes and then, okay,
we have a voting in the beginning. So how many % of our visitors is pro or contra a special technology and their use and their maybe positive or negative impact on society, and we have a voting after the discussion. So this makes a difference, and we are collecting all these data. We are also collecting the data from the games, and so every visitor gets his own individual future. We have yes. You can send it by email to yourself. What is my personal future? Is it more on the technology side, or more on a or do I prefer not to use special technologies? And we are collecting this data, and we are involved in several research projects, and we give always a feedback to this project. How welcome is a special technology or a special idea?
Many thanks.
Yeah, I'm just grabbing the microphone here. Are there more questions from the audience? Yes, over here. Maybe you can introduce yourself shortly and then ask the question.
Yes, hello. I'm Lars from Vilvite Science Center in Bergen, Norway. Well, several of the panel of this great presentation have mentioned that they work with industry partners showcasing real prototypes in the exhibit. So I could pose this to any of you, I guess, but let's go for Dubai. How do you make actual industry prototypes work as interactive exhibits? Do you have any real-life experience that you would like to share with us? Thank you.
Yeah, actually, that's a great question. Thank you. Can I take that? I don't know if I'm on audio or not. Okay, so thank you for the question. One of the buildings just outside the museum was the first 3D printed building in Dubai. I believe it was something in 2012 or 2014. I'm sorry, the dates escape me right now. I think much of Dubai's provocation is to go, yes, we can talk about the future, we can talk about these technologies, we can talk about whatever, but on some level, we have to build it and see what happens. I don't think that any of these technologies or ideas are really easy, but I do think somebody has to almost bite the bullet and go, let's see what happens. For me personally, the museum itself, the shape of the museum is super interesting from one perspective, because people love to talk about the parametric design aspects of it and how it's algorithmic and all this other stuff. the real aspect of it for me is that we haven't seen a lot of buildings in this kind of a non-traditional shape. And it gives us the opportunity to now think in different ways about what can happen next. It's really the first step in a long line of provocations that we then take action for the next generation of whatever comes about, right? I don't think that there's a static future either. It's just a mechanism for us to start having these conversations and start trying to one-up each other. Obviously, someone's going to make a better, more interesting, more cool solution, and we will keep like striving towards something more, I would say, interesting.
Thank you, Sundar. Maybe you have something to add, or no?
Yeah, so it's actually the last floor. It's this floor of tomorrow. So in this case, it is showcased as a temporary exhibition. So so we really collaborated, and we have an exoskin there, which is at the moment tested, and other elements. And the visitor, I mean, the first 3 floors, I think, are about engagement. This last floor of today and tomorrow is more shaped as a temporary exhibition, as it can also be updated on a regular basis with new collaborations.
Thank you. I have another question here.
Thank you very much. I'm Peter from the Danish Museum of Science and Technology. And thank you for really interesting presentations, all of you. And one thing I guess is the real challenge to Museum of the Future is our own imagination. That how can we imagine something we don't know of? And how do we avoid actually just creating stereotypes of, I mean, to a certain extent, some of the aesthetics of these exhibitions are based in sci-fi aesthetics and so on. So I guess having a Museum of the Future actually entails having other work modes where we sort of need to find ways to transgress our current stereotypes and our sort of current facts. Do you work with that somehow organizationally, or how do you deal with that?
I saw a lot of nods, so we might have multiple answers here.
Yes, I thank you for this interesting question. I mean, this was exactly the point with my first slide. We don't work together with a fixed bunch of scientists for finding answers to these questions. But of course, we have many discussions with different scientists, but also with the public. And this was how we found our way really to not to answer, but to ask questions. And to put some of the, let's say, some pathways you already know today, and you can think about them, how to transmit them in the future. And then ask people how, on which way or which station on this pathway do you want to interrupt? Where is the point where you can really change the future or the things to develop? And this was the idea to really think in pathways, and then to ask where's the station, where's the point to stop or to continue or to change. This is not a simple answer, I know, but perhaps the others do one.
So basically, I think we in Atelier Brückner, we had the chance to do 2 very different future museums which opened in the last half year, and with a very different approach, dealing exactly with this topic you are mentioning. I think for the Nürnberg Museum, this is just showing possibilities for the future and opening a field that people understand that there are many possibilities, many thinking behind it, and also engagement is necessary. For the Museum of the Future in Dubai, I think it is a spectacular speculative story where we somehow create an environment based on also on projects and ideas on scientific research, which somehow also it shows a picture, but it's only one way of looking on that. Maybe Sundar wants to add to this.
Yeah, I think it gives us opportunities also. I mean, as I said, it's more of a provocation, right? I think we could always go down so many different paths, but it also gives us the opportunity for conversations internally. What we've provided is our vision of some of the solutions that we see coming forward. And I think Britta pointed to this, and so did Sharon. There are scientific aspects to what we have proposed. It is definitely not purely fictional. It certainly is somewhat imaginary. We have to like push ourselves to those degrees. But I think there's the side aspect to this, which is how do we make these solutions come alive? And this is where I think the conversation, the engagement with the humans in this space are really important, because we all need to be able to tell the story of how we're going to get there and how we're going to manage it and operate it and all this other stuff that we often forget about as part of, whatever this future is. Again, like if we look back 50 years and if somebody asked us what's going on 50 years in the future, we can talk about the flying cars and the iPhones and whatever. But at the end of the day, it's really how we interact with each other and how our systems of governance and engagement and communication have kind of evolved and how they will continue to.
Thank you, Sundar. So I have a question here in the back from Brett.
Hey everybody, thank you for a great session. I was very lucky to go to Dubai recently and see your museum, and it's quite something. But I would love to know what hasn't worked. You've all told beautiful, positive, successful stories, but I'd love to hear a little about what has failed.
Hear, hear. I wanted to ask that question as well. What would you change? What has failed?
Sundar, do you want to start? I mean,
this is a very strong topic for me, so I may not stop. I think I'll start with what succeeded, which was unexpected for me, because I think it's actually something that is not what most people expect. I think what succeeded about the building is seeing the people around it. And you've been to Dubai. I think I would pose this to you: were you surprised by how engaged people were even outside the building? Because what I see every day when I leave work very late is people just hanging around, just sucking up the space. They actually love just the fact of the space being there, and for them to kind of engage with it, even if it's not a narrative that's strictly about the future. Yeah. So for me, this organic aspect of humanity is super important.
Yeah.
To address the point about what failed.
I mean, I think we have a lot of things which were really difficult. I think overall, the building is as it is. We didn't have any influence on the building, so we had to implement our journey, and there was also not that much space. And of course, as you see in Dubai, especially during Expo, there were millions of people, and they wanted to push people through. So I think it was very difficult to really enjoy the spaces as you have seen them now. I think this will take a while. I mean, I think that's somehow always the problem of opening projects. How do you cater for the masses who want to go in, and how can you still have the experience? I think that will slow down, and then I hope that the spaces and the experience you will see. I don't know if this was something you experienced, but I can imagine. So I think there were technological. I mean, always I think technology is always something which is we need to test. We see that sometimes things need to be improved, and I think we are ongoing. So I think it's not. I think before the opening is after the opening, or I mean, it's something where you really need to look. And I'm very honest as always. So Shirin probably tells another story, perhaps one last sentence about it, and then.
So basically, I think a project is always a process, and there are many, many challenges on this way, and we somehow, at the end, have a result, which was the result which was possible within the conditions we had, and I think we created something which is a unique experience, surprising experience. If you look at other future museums, and I think this is at the first moment a challenge for every visitor, a surprise that about the format of the museum, and I think this is something we are dealing with.
We have 2 more questions at least, so I will continue.
Hi, and thank you so much for the great presentation. I'm curious about...
Can you introduce yourself?
I am Andrés Roldán from Colombia, from Medellín, from Parque Explora. And I have a kind of feeling that it's always when you are designing science museums, and it's when you think about the future or science and technology, it's always about something that it's beyond the limits of everything. And in a way, it detaches people to humanity, to heat, to... So how do we... How are you shaking yourselves, thinking in the future of the museums, of not becoming obsolete in terms of the aesthetics and so on, and less high resolution, LED illuminated, stainless steel thing, and more like, you know, like home, like, because in a way we still, I think that we tend to replicate again the visions of a future that looks like Star Wars, but at the end of the day, we are human. So how do you try to approach this problem that I guess most of us has, even with regular museums that we have?
Can you try to answer it slightly short,
okay,
so that we have time for another question?
Okay, yes. So in Futurium in Berlin, this Denkraum Mensch, so the human-centered space, was exactly about that, trying to not think of techno-optimistic solutions. But I think really where we are today with the Facebooks of the world creating a parallel virtual world that becomes kind of an image, we need to keep our feet on the ground. What does the everyday mean? And I guess maybe for me, like now having listened to the presentations, for me this most interesting thing was the kind of thinking of so what are future museums for? And it can be the sort of aspirational quality, it can be the empowerment to actually call to action, transform something, or it can be informative. And I guess this sort of a mandate where these projects stem from also represent nicely this different perspective that all have this kind of a very different quality, but still dealing with the future. That was short.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Maria from Museum of Science in Milan. I have a question about process of developing the 3 museums. You talked about scientists being involved and industry, of course, but I wanted to ask, in the process of developing, what are the types of professionals you have been involving in the work teams to address the complexity of the experience and of the topic, and to design together what the visitors will be doing and talking about and being engaged with?
In Nuremberg, we try to have a very broad range of different disciplines, from social sciences up to physics and technological sciences. So to really focus on the different aspects of technology and its impact on society and on individuals. That was our way, and I think it's similar with the others.
Yeah. Sundar, yes.
Yeah, I think I would say we try to find irrational, crazy people to try and bring ideas to life. And I say that only slightly in jest because I think we love to think that professionals are the ones who know what things like the future are about. But really, it's about people who have a strong sense of what the story of where we're going is. I think we really have to find people who have a vision and who know how to hold on to it. And it comes with a lot of different disciplines that we have to respect very strongly. On this project, for example, like project management has been fantastic. Development has been fantastic. Design has been fantastic. Like just when I go down the list of the disciplines that were important for us to get here, there are fields that when I graduated, I would never have thought this is the kind of thing that somebody would pay someone to do. And I think this is what I think is important for us to promote significantly more. When I tell people what I do, they go, oh, you do IT. It makes me very angry. And I think we have to get to that point of really understanding that experience design is really where the world is at, because we create manifested imaginations so that people can build these realities in their day-to-day life.
Thank you. We have one more question because we're over time already. So one more question and one answer.
Thank you. My name is Yuri Karpan. I'm coming from Ljubljana, from Kapelica Gallery, where I'm art director. And I have a question for all three of you, actually, because what I've seen is...
No, only one.
It's they will decide. It's a spectacular use of technology that it's actually a perpetuation of what we are doing already now. And when we are talking about the future, I also heard using a word human-centric. No? But we know that the anthropocentric approach to use of technology brought us here where we are now in Anthropocene, where we managed to actually ruin the whole world, the whole planet, with this kind of using of technology. So how are you tackling this anthropocentric approach, and how you intend to include non-human agencies?
Very good question. One answer. Who grabs the microphone?
About future options. Our first question was always not to talk about innovations for themselves, but to talk how would this future option answer to all these challenges we do have. So what will these future options play in the role in solving climate change, global social injustice, and so on. And for these big challenges, we have these three spaces, and every space has its own answers to this. And of course, that's why we are talking about this nature first space or area of the exhibition. There we talk about all this climate change and so on, and this is the answer. Of course we know, that's for me, that's very important, because we can't make three parts. So nature, technology, and humans, we have to bring them together. But in the exhibition, they are separated, but we always try to fit them together in the different stations of the exhibition.
Thank you. I think we need to continue the discussion over coffee. I have a whole list of questions that I didn't answer yet, but thank you for your wonderful questions. Thank you for your wonderful presentations. Please fill in the evaluation forms, and hope to see you later. Bye-bye. Thank you.